that's,
Can you hear me?
yes.
Okay, good. Playing with microphones. Okay, shall we get going? We have our quorum. Want to do attendance or can we skip that with the video?
We don't have roll call on our agenda, so however you want to proceed.
Okay. we're
I've
good.
jotted notes.
Yeah, we have minutes to approve. Any comments or anybody want to make a motion?
So moved.
Move. Second.
Move to approve the minutes of October 2nd, 2020. All in favor?
Approved.
We should do a roll call vote just for, because that's what we need to do.
Okay. Jean Marie Caterina,
Yes.
Corey Fellows,
Yes.
Rick Shanae,
Yes.
Dave Merrill, aye. Moving on to item number 2, review of the October 7th workshop.
Yeah, so I think, we set this meeting up, but, we had the workshop, just a week and a half ago. So thought it'd be good to catch up and just sort of gauge folks' reaction and next steps. Obviously, we're talking about our next steps as a committee, doing a couple of more public forums to get the plan out there. But I think just sort of interested in hearing what the committee's reaction to a couple of things. One, I think I would like to hear what you guys thought of the video that we put together. I think Karen and I already have a few thoughts as to some adjustments we can do. We thought the committee members nailed it. I know my pieces weren't quite as well scripted, so I think we can probably go back and do some refinements there, but be certainly interested to hear what your thoughts are. And then what, I think that would be the first piece, and then maybe the other piece, sort of what we heard and what we should be thinking about coming out of that, and have some thoughts there as well. But I guess I'll maybe just start by asking you first, how you felt the presentation went, the format, things we can think about, maybe refining as we move forward.
I'll talk as a town councilor and the feedback I got. The counselors thought it was good. I mean, it was fairly concise, for what you had to cover. I thought the comments were good. Yeah, I could use a little bit of editing if you're going to put it out to the public. But I mean, come on, it's not a professionally produced video bit either. So, but it got across the broad brush of what goes on with the comp plan. So yeah, I think it would be good to use it and make sure it gets posted up for people to look at and whatnot. I will tell you that I'm just going to give you the heads up that a couple of the members, my fellow town council members, were talking last week that they thought we should start all over with the comp plan, but hopefully we've nipped that one in the bud. And
Jean Marie, was that before or after the workshop?
after, but they've been, this has been simmering for a while anyway. And these are folks who they've got their own agenda, so to speak. God love them. But they don't understand what a comp plan is either still. They still don't get it, even though I've tried to tell them it's the broad brush vision for the town. And you need this broad brush vision before you can do the growth management. Otherwise, technically you're in violation of state statute there also. So, and there's some underlying, what's the word I want to use? Paranoia is strong, but there's some underlying feeling that it's the same people all the time making all of these plans for the rest of us. And we need new blood and we need new ideas and yickety yak, yak, yak. But that being said, Tom put out a really good memo that I should have brought, and I'm sorry I don't have it. I mean, it's on my computer somewhere, and I have no idea how to find, technology is beyond me with this stuff. But Tom basically explained why it made sense to have a lot of the same players for consistency, that we do bring in new ideas because some of the people on council are new. People who are on different committees in town are new, and it goes out to the public. We have to keep hammering that it does go out to the public again for input. So just so you know what the flavor of the day is with the town council. So I would like to see us make sure we do a really good job in getting public feedback and making sure we've got all the avenues open. Now, as you all know, you can lead the horse to water, but you can't make him drink. And unless it's hitting someone in the face, they aren't going to even bother looking at it. But we at least have to make sure we make that effort and document it. So that's where the council is. But the video, I thought the video was good. I thought it was great. And I was thinking, wow, that's awesome. We should do this all the time now with things like this. So they're available for the public. So that's it.
One general thought that I had, and it relates somewhat to this question about continuity, or whether there should be as much continuity in terms of who's involved and whatever else, is that there's this inherent challenge with this type of process, which has been exacerbated in this case, obviously, because we've had some delays because of things beyond our control, is that it's just by definition a moving target. So when people talk about, well, let's not rush it, or let's wait for this, let's wait for that, at some point we have to put pencils down with the understanding that, of course, things are changing, and we've tried to strike the right balance between being specific in certain areas, but also general enough so that it's useful going forward. So that's, and that sort of also gets into process in terms of the question of, well, when do you conclude that you've gotten enough input from the council, from the public? There's that question of, okay, well, once the public weighs in one more time and then we make revisions, does the public get to look at it one more time? I mean, and I get the impulse there, and it's legitimate to an extent, but at some point we do have to say pencils down. And I would hope that folks could at some level understand that. And I maybe that's part of what Tom got to, but that was a general impression that I had, that at some point there needs to be an understanding that this has already been a very long process. And in some ways we've been, victim of our own effectiveness in that way, that it's been so thorough and such a long process. So then you can have people say, sort of turn that around and say, well, this has gone on so long, it's sort of not even relevant now. Let's just start over again. And I'd hate to see that, obviously.
And that is where some of them are coming from. It's like, well, it doesn't have a lot about the downs and this and that and, whatever. And Tom did point out to them that it's a snapshot of a place and time. It's broad brushed, and it gives you the framework from which to work. And then I think what people forget too is, so you have this comprehensive plan and a snapshot in time, but then you're moving forward through the town council process to address over time, over 10 years or whatever, whether you need to change ordinances, whether something's working or not, and new traffic studies, what developments are coming down, because none of us have crystal balls either. So I think, I know I'm working on my fellow counselors. Tom's working on them. The chair of the council is very on board with, getting the process. It's just, it's like counseling. It's going to take a bit to get some of them to calm down. So, and I will tell you that I've had to push back hard. They've been bringing up moratorium again. stop issuing permits. And I'm like, well, great, you can do that. But if you want to be, sued by somebody, be my guest. So I think we've gotten them off from that. So
Jean Marie, when they talk about starting all over, do they mean throwing this version in the trash can and writing a whole new one?
yes,
Or,
which makes no sense. I mean, that's absolutely ridiculous. And again, it's got as much to do with style. And well, maybe you don't know me well enough. I said to one of them, I said, well, where the hell were you 2 years ago?
Yeah,
So
I think, Jean Marie, my understanding is I think there's some, much like I think some of the committee members felt when we first saw the plan, that it's so different from the 2006 plan, which is so very prescriptive. And Rick, you know it better than anyone. Each area or district designated in the land use plan had a very, very prescriptive. This shall have 5 units per acre. These are the allowable uses. It was, it was fairly straight line to what the zoning changes are.
that's
Whereas
exactly.
this plan, we really identified, okay, most of the town we want to preserve as it is. How we go about doing that isn't exactly laid out, but that's what we want to do. These are the areas we want to grow, and we should look at the type of uses that should be in there. And that's, yes, there are some more details in there. I don't mean to oversimplify it, but when you synthesize it down to its basic, it really is much more, as we talked about, synergistic, just about, okay, to preserve most of the community, we need to, try to focus growth in certain areas. Now the next step is going to be, what does that mean when we focus growth? We don't say
you are right.
it should be 5 units per acre or 2 units per acre, or, that's
You're
going to
right.
be.
You're right on. You're right on with that, because
Yeah.
that was some of what I heard. Well, it's not saying what we should do. It's not
And
being prescriptive.
And that was an intentional.
Right.
That was
And I
intentional. That
explained
was the process we set out to do. So I think that is just one of the pieces that we need to continue to, remind folks that, yes, we set out to do something different here. But what I didn't hear what I did hear, let me put it that way, what I did hear during the workshop was the visions. I didn't hear anyone pushing back on the 5 sort of
Right.
foundational visions. And to me, that's, if we agree there, then, what happens with the rest of the plan is the heavy lift over the next few years. Those are the policy decisions. Those are the district by district discussions that will then occur moving forward. That's how I have taken the plan. And I think that's how the plan is laid out, how I read the plan to be laid out. So, hopefully that, others agree with that, and how we message that, I think is good.
Well, I will tell you that, remember, we're in what I call the silly season right now of politics. You're getting closer to election day, and there's now a candidate or two who are, espousing, we got to stop growth, and growth's an issue, and they've picked up that banner. And so that's spilling over into the council. So part of what I was going to mention today, and I'll bring it up now, is I would like to see us wait. I know you don't want to hear the word wait, but part of me thinks we need to wait on these public meetings until after the election is done. Just because there's so much, just to see who are we going to be dealing with, who's going to be sitting on the council as part of it, but also people aren't focused on anything else right now, including people who've already voted. There's still, people just don't want to hear anything else right now. That's just what I think. So,
Yeah, I think, as Karen and I have some thoughts about the timing and what those future public workshops or forums will look like, and so we can talk about that in a little bit once we.
and people aren't going to be traveling, or they shouldn't be, for Thanksgiving and Christmas and whatever. Not to say that it doesn't affect agenda somewhat, but I think that, mid-November before you get into Thanksgiving and then right after Thanksgiving is actually not a bad time to be doing public hearings or whatever. So that's my thought on that.
My 2 cents, I agree. I think a couple rough edges, it could be smoothed out. And then on the bigger picture, we've had an open seat, right, since Susan left. Has there been any movement to fill that seat?
I don't know that I'll have to take a look. I think we're full. I'm trying.
We are full. We are full. I'm on the ANC.
I think Robin, I think when Susan went off,
Oh,
Robin
okay.
joined, I think, is how that worked, if I'm not mistaken. And Corey, was that around the time you were getting off the planning board? So I think
Oh, it was shifting around.
I'll take a second look at that, Dave, but
All
I
right.
think we may.
I think
be full up.
that's generally right. Robin became the planning board rep, and then I moved to at large.
Think so.
Yeah.
All right, well.
Yeah, long-range planning is full. I mean, there's no openings on long-range planning.
I thought that might be one way to, if we, new blood is certainly always, warranted to keep these things rotating, but we seem to be the core group that has a desire and a passion to keep this effort moving forward, so.
Yeah, and I mean, I will just say, I know, Karen and I had a recent conversation with one of our current committee members who I think is, once the plan is done, is ready to take some more time resting. I think Judy is, she's obviously been, doing everything for the town for so many years that I think she's still likes it, but is, she's at that point of her life where she's getting tired. So I think that's might be one opportunity. Dave, I just want to ask you, you said there's some rough edges. I just want to were you referring
More
to the
technical,
video?
more on the technical end of.
Yes, okay.
I think there were, I think somebody was cut off at one point in the audio and.
Yeah.
No, it's purely technical. I guess when we go into the neighborhood or the follow-up meetings, you were mentioning splitting this up into smaller chunks, which I think would be a good thing. An hour is really stretching some people's attention at times.
Yeah.
So it's certainly just watching a video rather than the interaction. So I think people
But
engage.
we talked about a couple of things. Number one, the public participation piece can get removed from that and kept separate, because I don't think it's as relevant as when you're going out and you're talking to people, because that's public participation right there. So they don't need the history of that. But we can excise that out and keep it separate. So it's there, somebody wants to watch it. And I think the other thing we talked about is, tightening up the land use piece and having a couple of more slides in there. For the record, this was Jay and I were experimenting and laying in tracks and putting everybody in the video. So that was new for us. So we've got a handle on some of the technical pieces now.
And I think we did a good job of giving you guys sort of a defined narrative. I know, at least for my part, I had a couple of bullet points that I was just sort of doing a presentation from the hip. So as I, now that I've listened to it, can certainly refine some of those moments down, just to shave, because I think we went through what that presentation was 28 minutes, I think you said. So
25, something like that.
We'd really like to get that to about 15 minutes or less if we can, because again, these forums are all going to be on, they're going to be they're going to be Zoom. So if we can really just, do 15 minutes and really get to hearing from the input, really, that's what we need at this point. And so hopefully people have done their homework to read the plan, and that's part of what we need to do before these workshops, is to drive people to where that link is and get them looking at it. But
And I think the other thing that we can do to check the box, we can easily update the demographics in there. Yes, it is old because of when we did it. There's new data that's been issued since then. We can just drop that in, and then that can be updated. And that answers that question. And I don't think there's anything in the data, including what the Downs is doing, that doesn't reinforce really the tenets of the plan as it is.
So are we waiting for the council to give us the green light to proceed, or should we just proceed?
No, so our thought is we are proceeding with the public forums, with the I think what the long range planning committee needs to do, and had an opportunity to talk with Tom about this, and I think he's talked to council leadership about as well, said long range planning committee do our job, right? Our job is to do the public forums as we normally would, collect additional public input. I will say that there is Paul Johnson, Chair Johnson did put out a Google form to all the counselors asking for their input. So their input can be part of our public process. The long range planning committee, through maybe the month of December or something like that, sort of take a look at any new information that comes in, think about any refinements to the plan we might want to propose, and then bring that to the council. And then council will need to figure out what it wants to do for its public process. But really, your charge as the long range planning committee is to, do one last sweep, knock any rough edges off, so to speak, and then say, okay, council, we as a committee have heard, and we believe this is a workable document.
Was it Dave or Corey that said, after about an hour, people kind of zone out on Zoom meetings. What about the possibility that we would, well, first of all, do you anticipate having a similar video presentation for the public hearings?
Yeah, so our thought is, so at one point we had thought about sort of the next 3 public meetings, sort of doing them, taking separate elements of the plan. But as we thought about that, then we're really asking folks to participate in 3 additional meetings. It's really asking too much of the public, quite frankly. So what we're really thinking about doing for these public forums is a presentation, the refined presentation that we did with the council workshop. Refine that down and do that, because that gives everyone the overview, and then have a general discussion. But the thought is, what we can do is we can take elements and post links on the website, so those that are interested in the public process will be able to review that there. I think there's been, and we've heard this sort of throughout, there's been a question about, well, how does this plan, what are the what are the main differences between this plan or the 2006 plan, or what was, so we can do sort of a matrix. The 2006 plan has, those 16 or so sort of benchmark items that we went through months ago. So I think we can do a quick sort of synopsis that said, all right, here's what the 06 plan said, sort of in the big picture, here's what we've done. So we're really thinking about the public forums really being the same, so that we're, so that we aren't asking the public to come to multiple Zoom meetings. We know that's not an easy thing for people to do. And we're also thinking, Jean Marie, along the same lines you were, to stay away from the election. Karen was very, that was Karen said, we are not doing this election week. And I said, good idea, Karen. So we're really targeting maybe the week of November 9th or November 16th, probably to do a series, 3 nights in a row or 3 in 1 week, just so that way folks, if a Monday, Tuesday, they can pick whichever day sort of works best for them to participate and give us their public comments. And again, if we are able to do 3 that are the same, that way we can try to keep them, no more than an hour and a half. I think once you get past that time period, people just lose their marbles. So even if we get to an hour and a half on the first night, we can say, hey, looks like there's still 20 of you that want to, keep the conversation going. For those that wish to tonight, we're happy to. For those who are tired tonight, join us tomorrow night or the next night, and we'll be sure to get your comments early so you can, we can try not to burn people through.
Would it
And
make
obviously
sense?
we can adapt if night 1 goes flat and doesn't really get us anywhere, we can reshape the next meeting.
What about the possibility of having the video presentation be posted on the town's website?
Yep.
And telling people that, whatever, we're going to have a public forum to discuss whatever section of whatever we're going to discuss on such and such a date by Zoom. If you intend to participate, please go to the town website before the meeting and watch the video presentation, so that when we have the actual public Zoom meeting, we don't take up 20 minutes of it running a video. Because again, I think this issue of how long people's attention spans will last for a Zoom meeting might, different than if it were in person. So people would have to do a little homework. Maybe that doesn't work. I mean, maybe people just aren't going to be willing to do that, but.
Rick, that's not actually one of the things we could do, as Karen said, if we're going to do a series of these, and again, we're thinking sort of try to do them in 1 week, so that way we can pivot. If it falls flat, we can come up with it. But we could, as we get towards the second or third ones, we could say, okay, as Karen said, we can adapt as we go. And we can, if we see all the same names on the attendees list, we could say, okay, we see most of you were here last night. Do you need to see that presentation again, or do you just want to jump right into the conversation and dialogue piece? That might be.
Are these set up so that people have to first say, yes, I want to participate, and then you send them a Zoom link, or is it just wide open?
So because
I have to participate in a Town of Wells meeting as their attorney next week. And I got an initial meeting saying, do you intend to be in the meeting? Yes. Then they send you a link and you got to.
Yeah, no, I think this will be set up much like the way this meeting is. The agenda
Okay.
will be right on the homepage, and anyone who wants to, and they'll show up as an attendee. So
Yep. Okay.
And then if they want to speak, they'll raise their hand and. Yep.
Well, it might be a good idea to consider putting the video presentation as a standalone link that on the website, and people advertising that it's there. If you intend to come to the public forum on such and such a date, please take the time to watch our presentation in advance, so we maximize the amount of time that we have to listen to public comment.
And then maybe we just really quickly hit the highlights in the first 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Memories. Yeah.
If I could also, and this is the teacher in me, I apologize, I teach on Zoom, is to make sure you have visuals. And so you're breaking up it's not just conversation, that you're breaking up with diagrams or pictures or an excerpt from the comp plan or something. I just think it keeps people engaged because everyone has a different learning style. And if you're not a visual learner, this is awful. And if you know what I'm saying, it's just bringing in different styles just to keep them engaged. Otherwise, some
Absolutely.
people will be bored out of their mind and will just
Right.
tune them right out. So
I also think if we could talk about the types of questions too that we should ask, because I think it's helpful to start out with at least some questions that we can ask the crowd rather than just saying, what do you think? So if anybody has any good suggestions.
Well, that's a good idea.
and you can use the chat feature for that. Because I sometimes will start a class with, all right, go to chat and write down for me your top concern or what you learned from this lesson or whatever. And they'll all go and fill it out. And then I will get it up there for them. Of course, I have someone who helps me with the technology when I'm doing that. So
yeah, I think we found the chat feature on public meetings I find it hard to engage in both the questions that are being asked by those who are in the room, and then if there's a chat, it does.
Yeah,
I find that.
but who can we talk to the IT guy? Is there someone who's really good with Zoom who uses it?
I think you almost, in my experience, from what I've seen, you have to, if you're going, you have to have someone who is dedicated to
Yes, hosting,
to managing that. and
yes.
stuff.
Yeah,
Some
you need a
things
host
to the
other
whoever
than,
the moderator is, and it's a
Right.
whole other
Right.
dimension.
right.
Yeah, we can do.
But I do like that general idea of asking some questions, and maybe there's some of the same questions that
That's just what I was thinking.
way back
Yeah.
when we were doing the charrette type things and people were using
Yeah.
Post-it notes saying, what are some of the things that you like about Scarborough? What are some of the things that you wish Scarborough had? Just to sort of stimulate some of that conversation, and then obviously we need to sort of connect those two themes in the plan.
Well, the questions could be more along the lines of, the plan as now written says blah, blah, blah. How do you feel about that? What are your thoughts about that? Or do you think this is an accurate vision or something like that? And maybe just 3 or 4 fairly broad questions that would prompt the kind of responses we're looking for. And then at the end of the meeting, just, open discussion or something like that. I think if we just have these forums and just say, what do you think?
Right.
We're going to be all over the place. So the questions that we would ask are pretty crucial. And that may be worth our collective input on. And I wouldn't have more than, 3 fairly broad questions to try to get at what we're looking for the public to give us input on.
Yeah, and I
And without preventing people from, in an open discussion at the end of the meeting, just saying what they want to say, but.
Right.
yeah, I do
Maybe we
think
could
that
maybe
having
we
a
could
couple
each
of-
submit suggestions online later. One thing that
Yeah.
comes to mind is sort of like, what are the top 3 things that, again, and I agree with Rick that ideally you'd want to sort of be able to connect it to the plan, so it's not too open-ended. But yeah, I think that's a good way to approach it.
There is a feature on Zoom called Whiteboard,
Mm.
where you can use literally a whiteboard. So if people that you can write it on there. But I don't know, again, I'm not sure. I'm not the tech person. I'm lucky I get someone who does this stuff for me. So it's just
'Cause we
something to
might-
think about too.
We may have to adapt after we see what kind of attendance we have at the first meeting. I mean, if we get 6 people, but if we get 100 people,
Yeah, these
I'm
guys-
I'm gonna
That'd
throw
be
this.
awesome if we got 100 people.
Oh, I know. I'm going to throw this out there for you. I'm not one who likes to go to live meetings just because of, my own concerns and family situation. But I know we've been doing hybrid town council meetings. And do we want to do one maybe that's hybrid for folks who don't like Zoom, don't want it to Zoom, they don't mind coming into town hall, knowing that seating's limited and whatever. I mean, but we have to be I won't be there, but there may be other people who'd be willing to do that. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there.
And
Is it
just
not?
for the others on the committee who don't know what the hybrid is essentially it's still a Zoom meeting. It is still a virtual Zoom meeting, but Chambers is open and we have capacity for I think upwards of 25 people. But essentially, if you think of it, the Chambers becomes one of the boxes. So like you're seeing me, you would be seeing Chambers. So it's still engaged like this. So yeah, I think that we because of voting, we don't have access to Chambers until after the election, which we're talking about doing these meetings after the election. So I think that is an opportunity to do that. But it does,
And just do one of them,
Yeah.
even just say we'll have one hybrid for those of you who either don't have access, you don't have the broadband access or whatever.
Yeah.
But you have to be willing to come into town hall. But you're keeping the meetings, it's not like someone's going to be sitting through 3 hours of meetings either, which is different from to use the epidemiologist term, the viral load. It's a little different And particularly, if it's spread out, not everyone is sitting at the table. There's maybe just a couple of people who are comfortable doing that, sitting at the table. But at least it gives the public an opportunity to come in who don't have access to Zoom or don't want to be there. So
As we think about doing these 3 workshops, I think Karen and I have started to target probably the week of November 16th. And I guess I'd be interested in what the committee's feeling is on trying to do them as close to back as possible, or do we spread one of them maybe the prior week? Do one the week of the 9th and then 2 the week of the 16th. I'm just, what are folks' thoughts on that in terms of what might drive folks to attend? And I guess the other thing I think about with the week of the 16th is, I know there's a council meeting on that Wednesday, so I think we wouldn't want to conflict with that.
the new council will be seated that date too.
There's a planning board meeting on the 16th, which I don't think that'd be the Monday. I don't think that would necessarily prohibit us from doing one, because for the most part, I don't think the general public attends public planning board meetings, but certainly that would mean Jamel would be otherwise not available. And frankly, lately I've been attending them as well because of all the Zoom features. So I'm just trying to think of, and obviously we'd want to stay away from a Friday night. So.
We also talked about, I think, the week before, because the
week
election
before
day is the 3rd, and then the week of the 9th has Veterans Day in it. That was one reason. Okay.
Yeah.
What about the 11th and then the Tuesday, Thursday of the following week around the council
Well,
meeting?
so the 11th is Veterans Day.
Oh,
So we could do
Right.
the 10th or the 12th. I guess that's, 10th or 12th, and then, do the 17th, 19th, or just trying to get a sense of what folks, or if you're not really all that concerned about it either way, we'll staff will jockey it around and figure it out. But those are the parameters that we're working around in the general timeframes. And really just wondering from your perspective, is there anything that jumps out at you as a red flag that says, oh, if we did it that way, that might harm getting the public involved, or if we did it this way, I think that would really work. If you don't have anything that jumps out at you, we'll play with dates and get it figured out.
I think it makes
I don't think it matters that much, but
Okay.
it sounds like, we're not going to have results from this election that night. It could be a week to 10 days as, the country tries to count these ballots. And people's attention is likely to be focused on that anyway. So the further past the election makes sense. Personally, I don't think this will be an issue either, but my older daughter, Emily, is going to have a baby sometime in mid to late November in DC. So Celeste and I are going to go down to DC at some point and stay for a while. So I'll be able to participate. I just certainly wouldn't be able to participate in any hybrid session where we have to be at town hall. So still a little fluid in terms of dates. These kids don't like to give you any kind of.
I was going to say, babies are like that, Rick.
one thing that I thought about, speaking of the election, and I certainly agree with the comment about, leading a horse to water and all that, but just as maybe one piece of the public outreach process, just to get the word out about whatever the meeting plan is going to be. I wonder if we could have some kind of a presence at the polls, that they have information tables that are set up as people walk out.
There are no tables.
There are no tables, right? I keep forgetting that we're not living in the same.
If you want to do it outside, I
Yeah.
think they're letting you,
Okay.
but not inside.
Yeah, in July they were outside.
I imagine we could have at least a poster board up that's
At least something, even if it's just a sign
on these
with
dates.
information, because that's a lot of eyeballs. And obviously people are going to be, they're going to be focused on the election. That's understandable, but seems like an opportunity to, among many different ways of getting the word out, it's an opportunity to have something in a high visibility environment.
Dates on it.
Can we get a story in the leader and or the forecaster that lays out, the schedule,
I would, we could certainly try. Yep.
Well, we have something called the Counselor's Corner in the
Oh,
Leader.
yeah.
I forget when it comes out, but I can ask Mr. Johnson.
Well, the town newsletter seems to come out
Ken on
once.
that, Jean Marie, and try to get an article typed up. And we can have the town,
Yeah.
we now also have a communications
Person, yeah, that's right.
director or person working for the town. And so I think part of what she's trying to work on is doing coordinated outreach. Sometimes we're a little haphazard, things will pop up on Facebook and then they'll show up in a newsletter, I think her piece is to really, I'll go to her and say,
I was gonna say, let's let
the word
her,
I need to get out. And
I forgot.
yeah,
Why don't we give this to her and say,
Yes.
you come up
Yeah.
with a communications plan? Because I'm not sure when, where it comes out.
Exactly.
So let's give it to her.
that's been our problem.
Yeah.
We've been haphazard. Like I said, something
Yeah.
will pop up in a counselor's corner one week, but not in a newsletter for 2 more weeks, and then pop up on Facebook. So, to have it systematically laid out, I think will be very helpful. So I'm really excited about this new position. She just started, I think, last week, maybe.
Yeah,
And she seems super sharp and on top of it. So it's going to
definitely.
be very good.
A couple random thoughts, just as we've been talking that have come into my mind, and obviously one would be trying to hone in on what the criticisms and I know we have some very large, broad. There's too much growth, or there's the town isn't the same, or it'd be nice to get some real specific feedback, whether it's from counselors or the town, or I know we'll reach out, but
Can I
we can
invite you
address them.
guys? Can I invite you guys who are interested? Come to our ordinance meeting. Thursday, the 22nd at 4:00. Our only, we're going to talk briefly about fireworks, but we're going to talk about growth management, and poor Jay was given a whole raft of data and whatever to come up with. So that may be a place, David, to get some of that.
Mhm.
And at least know that it's being prepared, and I'm going to defer to Jay here on that.
When is that meeting again?
Next Thursday, the 22nd at 4:00 on Zoom.
Kennedy's assassination day. No, that's next month.
No, that's the 25th. Come on.
Kennedy's assassination
Oh,
day
wasn't it the 25th? It doesn't
no,
matter.
November
Yeah,
22nd,
yeah, you're right. November.
1953. I was 9 years old, 10 years old, 63. 53. I was born 10 years earlier, so I was thinking
Yeah.
52.
Yeah.
So Dave, on that point, I think that's one of the, as I mentioned before, where Counselor or Chairman Johnson, it's hard when there's 2 Johnsons, I need to be clear on which one, Chair Johnson put together this Google form, has asked counselors to really sort of specify sort of the issue, sort of what page on the comp plan. And so I was thinking we might use that sort of format to put on the comp plan webpage as well, so that folks not only have the opportunity to send me an email with their comments, but they can just fill out the Google form. So that's something that I've got on the radar to work on over the next, probably get that up by the end of next week at this point.
Yeah, and similar, if there are questions ahead of time of our public forums, if people want to submit questions that we can maybe try to answer during the forums, but not be, live asking the questions,
Mhm.
is another way of trying to address concerns. And then my last random thought was, I know we've tried to rely on the 2006 plan to some degree, kind of as a cross-reference, but maybe we pick out some, rather than the whole thing, but try to pick out some specific sections that we are comfortable with, that really convey, work that's already been done and work that is kind of classic in nature, that's always going to be the direction that we want to pursue. Thinking outside.
The way I view the connection between the 2006 plan and this plan, in 2006, we did some pretty significant rezoning stuff, and also had a fairly lengthy checklist of to-do items, which literally went on for years. This time around, we're not really looking at major zoning changes as much as you said earlier, Jay, is development, are things happening in town the way we want them to happen, rather than we need to change the zoning at the Scarborough Downs area to promote development. So it really is a different beast this time around, I think, than last time. So it's building on what has happened as a result of the 2006 rezoning efforts, rather than wholesale rezoning.
And Rick, if you will recall, in 2003 through 2007, more or less. Remember, that was a huge building boom. That was
Yes.
that was when real estate was just wild and crazy, and it was the Wild West out there, and we did
Yep.
not have zoning to control it. So that drove a lot of that comp plan, as I recall. So
It did. I mean, it was major rezoning efforts, which we ended up putting in place.
Yeah, and I think, Rick, I like the way you put that in, 06, it was really about identifying those areas that we want to grow in, really targeting, and then
Right.
specifying what we meant by that. But now that we have implemented that and we're starting to see the articulation, and it's still not fully articulated, but we're starting to see it. This plan sort of identifies that, yes, we still want to grow in these areas. And now the question is, once we get through this plan and we've said, yep, this is still where we want to grow, the question is, what are the right sort of mixtures of uses? And that's the next
Right.
step. That's not
Right.
what this plan aimed to answer. So, it's, and that, whether folks feel that this plan should have or shouldn't have, we set out explicitly not to answer that with this comp plan. So, we can move forward answering those questions, but.
The one thing that concerns me about this process is, are we going to be accused of not getting enough public input because of the way we have to go about doing it? I mean, that's more.
I think the short answer is yes, no matter what.
Probably.
Not
Which
to
I
be
think-
not to be glib about it, but I think it's a good question.
it
I think
doesn't
it-
matter. Yeah, it doesn't matter. They're gonna whine about it anyway.
Well, I
People-
think though it heightens then the importance of these communications to the
Yes,
public,
yes.
that we're giving you the best opportunities we can to weigh in on the plan before it ultimately gets finalized and sent to the council for a vote.
And,
I mean, it'll be difficult, but it's doable.
I guess I want to step back a little bit from, the details and people wanting to say we haven't had enough public input. I think if you look at the full list of the types of things and the variety of ways that we tried to get input, I feel like even the numbers substantiate. I think more people participated in one form or another in this comp plan than probably any other comp plan, in the past. We may have had a small committee, but tell me a time when we've done anything that had, 90 people in person and 3,000 people on the website and, 600 people answering a survey, all at very different times. So we've checked in a number of different types of ways, as well as over time. And so I guess I feel like we've done a great job in public participation. And even if somebody wants to say, well, there's 20,000 people here and, you had 3,000 people coming to the website, I guess I would turn that back and say to the council, tell me a time when you had a question where you had 3,000 people tell you what you wanted.
That's a good point.
Yeah, and
So-
if you could put, may I suggest that you put that data down? This is what we've had, and put it in black and white and make sure it gets to this council.
Yeah, well, that's what we did in the video. Maybe it got lost, and I
No,
think
you
that's why
need,
we're-
you need to have it in writing, black and
Yeah.
white. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously, it's a recurring theme, a recurring challenge, and anyone, obviously, people have been involved with the budget, which is always a hot button issue. There's tends to be sparse attendance at the workshops, and then when the rubber starts to hit the road procedurally, that's when people suddenly decide to engage, and then you take a look at the percentage of people who vote on any given question. So, but I do agree. I think it's a valid question. I don't mean to trivialize it or be, sound cynical about it. And I think it does make sense to have a standalone
Yep.
kind of recap, laying out all the different venues and the numbers.
So one thing that's been mentioned a couple of times, not necessarily at the last meeting, but Jean Marie, I've heard it from different council members before, is, well, how do we answer the question, is something consistent with the comprehensive plan? And I think that's that piece that's out there for people. Either they want it to be really specific so that they can go and find on page X, it says, we can't do that. And the comp plan isn't supposed to be doing that. But I wonder, is there a general checklist that could be put together, or a set of questions that the council should ask themselves each time something comes up? To determine consistency, the council should review these 5 questions. It's sort of what we do with the contract zone, I think. Isn't there a list of questions in there that the council has to answer? I don't know whether or not that's something that would be useful as a tool to say, as you're evaluating new policies or whatever, here are the 10 questions you should ask yourselves to determine consistency.
So you're saying that this is some sort of a tool for the council?
Yeah, our tool for anybody thinking going forward. But I think that's one of those, I think that's been a frustration that at different times we've heard, well, everything's consistent with the comp plan, so
Yeah.
how are we supposed to know what that discussion should look like? It
Well,
may be an impossible
How do
task,
you mean
but
everything's consistent with the comp plan? If the comp plan lays out a vision for what the town's supposed to be, I
Yeah.
think it's, the comp plan is just that. It is all encompassing. So how you sort of lay out, okay, when a question comes before you, just look at these couple of things. I think you really have to look at the comp plan as we talked about. It's a holistic document. You
Right.
really try not to just piece out one little bit to say, now I recognize that happens, right? You do have to at some point sort of say, okay, consistency. But I think consistency is this comp plan is a visionary document. We want to preserve large swaths of our town just the way they are. I mean, that is really what the comp plan says. That's what, 87% of the town, we want to basically leave as sort of the rural suburban style development. And we want to direct growth to certain areas. So the question is
Miraculously.
that proposal generally meeting those things? And yes, there are some other details in there. I don't mean to diminish those, but
Huh.
largely it's,
Yeah. And again, that's the biggest challenge is, and I think while we're educating the public, we're educating the council at the same time, I hope that, again, as Jay said, and I've said to them 8 million times, 18 ways to Sunday, I guess is the saying, is this is a broad picture. This is a broad picture of your vision for the town and what you want to do and where you see the town in 10 years. Or even 50 years down the line potentially, but it's 10 years a block of time as to where you think you're going to go. The issue becomes you're dealing with different personalities. I happen to be in case you hadn't noticed, I'm a big picture person. So I'm real comfortable with the comp plan. And then I can see you take it, you know, you got the comp plan up here and then it goes like this and this and this down to implementation, you know, through, you know, the design of ordinances and the implementation of ordinances and your CEAs and your TIFs and whatever. But if you're a real detailed person, and there are a lot of people in this world who just don't get big picture, it makes them uncomfortable. They just don't get the comp plan thing. They look at that 2006 comp plan, as Rick said, that was much more prescriptive than comp plans really normally are. Just because of the nature of what was going on historically at that time or leading into that comp plan. So the question then becomes, how do you help people who are the detailed black and white people understand how the comp plan works, that your black and white stuff is in your ordinances.
Right.
It's not in the comp plan, it's in your ordinances, which you decide as a community you want to use to control growth or, you know, what can you do within these growth areas? I'll tell you right now, a big spark for some of this, for these people, is that drive-through, that whole drive-through thing on Haggis. It's like holy Toledo. You would think we were causing World War III or something. And people coming back and they're looking for special treatment, and you know, and again, you know, that's the political part that goes on in councils. But councils change every year. There's an election every year. So whatever. That's my speech for today.
Well, I mean, I think it's sort of, may find it silly, but you know, like Citgo has a mission statement, and you know, we have principles and how we go about doing our job. And I have it tacked up right in front of me, so I see it every day. I'm looking at it, and I'm wondering if you know, these 5 vision statements should be in front of the council like all the time. But I just think there are some small techniques that we might think about doing to help people internalize and understand, you know, that broad brush and what you should be thinking about all the time as you're moving forward and doing the detailed work of the comp plan, of the next steps of the comp plan.
Karen, when you talk about consistency with the comp plan, are you talking about a legal issue, a legal analysis?
I think a lot of things that we do have that statement that this should be consistent with the comprehensive plan. You know, whether it's in a new TIF policy or, you know, different things that the council is doing. I think there's a lot of times where it talks about, is this consistent with the comp plan?
Because when you're talking about, I mean, there's the general concept of consistency, I guess, with the vision.
Right.
But then there's the legal issue of whether new zoning
Mm-hmm.
is consistent with the town's comprehensive plan. That latter issue is pretty broad. I mean, pretty general. There's a couple of really good cases where the law court has, you know, analyzed that issue. I suppose if you want to get if we want to get a handle on that, I'm not sure that we do in this process, but
Right.
because but we might get a little input from town attorney if necessary on what the law court, what do the courts look at in determining whether zoning is consistent with the plan. But I don't see that. I think if I understand what you're saying is the more general concept of is where the town is going with development or non-development consistent with the vision
Right.
of this plan. So
Right. Well, there's that. And I think Jay and I said one of the, I think what's in there, we reminded ourselves there is a next step, there's section in the comp plan that says, determine what those performance standards are going to be for
Mhm.
the vision. I think that's in there, isn't it, Jay?
I think so. Yeah, we talked about that. That was one of the last things that we talked about as a committee is, one of the first things we need to do as a next step is to create a work plan coming out of, there really isn't this plan. We've talked about it all morning and frankly, for the last 2 years. It doesn't provide a work plan, it provides a vision. So that's going to be one of the pieces that we need to do is coming out of this, say, okay, now the hard work begins, frankly.
Well, the 2006 plan did do that.
Yes.
I mean, that plan led to this committee, basically.
Yeah, and I think
Used to be-
that's what we'll do, sort of circling back to one of your comments. I think that's one of the things we can pull out of that, that comparison of the 06 plan. We can sort of pull those pieces out and sort of say, okay, here's what's happened, and here's how it relates back to that comp plan, and here's how that notion is either pulled forward or modified in the new comp plan.
All right.
I think that'll go a long way
We
to,
do have one member of the public on when we're ready to get to public comment. I don't mean to shut the committee conversation, but I just want to make mention of that. And I don't know if that person wants to speak or not, but just a reminder when we get to it.
So just then we're agreeing then today that we are moving ahead.
She does have her hand up, guys.
Okay, I didn't mean to interrupt.
let's finish up our conversation, then we'll go to public comments. How about that?
Well, I was just gonna say, we're agreeing today then that we're gonna move ahead. We're gonna work on some communications to the public that we're moving ahead. We're gonna talk about scheduling the meetings with the public, format and when and where. And we're going to maybe put together, well, we are going to put together, it sounds like, one or more updated video presentations, whether they end up being shown at those meetings or prior to those meetings for pre-work by attendees is something that needs to be thought through a little bit. But that's what I'm hearing today.
Concur.
It's good. Get this done.
And we're targeting the week of November 16th. Is that everybody's?
I think
Yeah.
9th and 16th,
Maybe
we may
one-
need to spread it around based on other meetings, but as far from the election as we're able to get.
Yeah, and at least I personally would sort of and I'm sure everyone's going to have their preferences and constraints, but midweek works better for me during November than at very end of the week. Could be trying to do some college visits and some other things, so just throw that out.
Don't stack them up on a Friday night, huh?
Yeah. Right.
The week of the 16th or 9th works for me.
Okay.
Veterans Day, as you point out, is that midweek.
Yep.
The likelihood of, I think we're thinking that we would be heading to Washington around the 19th or 20th.
I guess as I look at the calendar and looking at the holidays and planning board and council meeting times, I'm really right now where my mind is, and this subject to change, is November 12th for the first one, and then the 17th. So the 12th, that'd be a Thursday. Then the 17th would be a Tuesday. Then the 19th would be a Thursday. And so, Corey, I know you were trying to push them earlier in the week, but I just don't.
That's
much of a
fine.
way of doing that.
That's fine for me.
So
I would have a conflict on the 19th anyway with the land trust. But again, I think that may be the day we head to Washington. So
yeah, I think once we lock down the dates, we'll be sure we get at least 2 or 3 long-range members there at least, if not everyone, of course. But yeah, so long as we have a few, I think that's good. Because these will all be videotaped as well. So folks we'll obviously take notes and all that good stuff. But
And I'm hopeful I'll still be around for the 19th.
right.
right.
Who
Yeah,
The
knows?
continuity.
yeah, that's right.
And Jay, do we want to ask if if people are willing to, if the committee members are willing to volunteer to sort of open up the meetings, certainly Jay and I will facilitate, but if we could have one of you be there to welcome everybody, say hello and say what the purpose of the meeting is, that would be nice.
With prepared remarks.
Excellent.
It helps. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll save it.
All right, anybody want to close? Last comments?
I should have said at the beginning, I thought you guys did a great job on the video presentation. It was good to have it succinct. I mean, it was a little stilted at points, but it was still, I think, well done. And
Focus. Yeah.
Did we want, Ms. Bristol had her hand up?
yes, wasn't this somebody?
Do you wanna-
To get to that. Yeah. And so we're all done then. So let's take public comments. Jay or Jamal, you can.
Okay, I'm gonna allow her to talk now. I think you're all set, Allison.
Seem to be having the same audio problem I think we had on the night of the workshop, Allison. So I will just mention that we did receive an email from Allison while she tries to jockey her microphone. We did receive an email, and that'll be part of the sort of public comment package we put together as the Long Range Planning Committee moves forward. So Allison, I don't know if that gave you an opportunity to figure it out.
I'm looking at the participants list and it doesn't seem like she has a microphone symbol. So I think maybe she's struggling with that. She could call in though, right?
Yes.
Isn't there a call-in option?
Yep.
Do you have that info, Jay? I didn't set up the meeting, so I don't have it. Or I can try and find it if you want me to.
That's what I'm trying to find right now myself. It's going to take a little while.
Question along those communication lines. I know there was an effort to get emails for the committees and ours being one of them. Is that in process or active, or does anybody know?
I guess I'm not sure what you mean. I'm sorry.
Counselor Johnson called me at one point back quite a while ago, and he's on the communications committee, I guess. It mentioned there is an effort to be able to get a direct line or an email address for each of the committees in town, so that if any of the public has a question for that particular committee, that there is a point of communications with an email.
You know,
like that hasn't gone anywhere.
I guess I would have not so much a privacy issue, but I would think that the only email you'd want to make available would be the email of the chair. And so if the members of the public want to pose questions to the Long Range Planning Committee, they would send their emails to you, Dave.
Yeah.
Or to Jay.
Typically, what we have a staff liaison
Yes.
to every committee.
Yeah,
And so really, we generally try to, just because I think many folks may not be comfortable having their email out publicly if they're just serving on not on an elected board, but as a voluntary board. So, but I think that's all part of what the communications.
what he was talking about was having like an email that's like, that says lrpc@scarboroughmaine.org, and I don't know who answers them. Yeah, we aren't giving out your personal emails because that does make you subject to FOIA potentially with your personal emails. So that, I think that's where you were going with that privacy, Rick.
The email that I generally use is my office email, which is public anyway. I'm more interested in saying, if I got an email from a citizen with a question on what we're doing, and it didn't go to everybody else, it just gets you know.
Right, and technically, anything that's coming in is public, if it's got to do with the public domain. Anyway, I'm not going to, you're the lawyer, I'm not, but anyway.
But the
But
idea
that
of
was,
having
that was the, yeah,
yeah.
that was, I happen
I
to know
see.
that that's where Ken was talking about, was having a LRPC@scarboroughmaine.org or
makes
planning
perfect
board
sense.
at, yeah.
Another
Makes
avenue
perfect
to
sense.
comment in.
Makes perfect sense. That concept is great. And then it wouldn't matter who's on the committee. There's always a committee email.
Any luck with Allison?
Haven't had any yet. Jamel and I both put the phone number up as our new names. So
Oh, so that's what that is. I wasn't sure whose phone number that was.
I noticed that too. I'm like,
So
what's going
we'll-
on?
we can give this, if you want, we can give this a pause to see if she has time to call in before you adjourn.
Still have 15
Yes.
minutes.
I guess the other, while we potentially see if that works, we can talk about, if you're ready, we can talk about the next meeting. Typically, our regular schedule is to meet the first Friday of the month. That would be November 6th. Do we want to flag that date as a potential? We know we're asking you guys to participate in a bunch of meetings, the workshop last night, this meeting, and then a couple of forums coming up. And I guess I've been so all over the map, I'm not sure what we would do on the 6th, but why don't we at least pencil it in and see what comes up over the next week or two and determine if we hold that one or not. Does that make sense?
Yep, if there's material.
Yeah, I may have to be just on the phone for that one because I might be on the road, but I could probably make it work.
Works for me.
Okay. We'll keep it scheduled and we'll see what comes. So I'm not seeing anyone new pop up on the attendees list, Dave.
Yeah. Sorry. A motion to adjourn? Maybe she could email a comment in and we could get it next time or something?
Yep.
Jay, can you just remind the committee or summarize some of the what Allison was writing about, or?
I haven't looked at it since last week and I don't want to shoot from the hip, and
Okay,
we'll make it part of the public comment package that we put together.
great.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye, aye, aye. Thank you all. Thanks, Jay.
Thanks,
Thanks, everybody.